Something strange is happening in Kansas. A tiny town surrounded by endless fields of wheat has become the epicenter of UFO sightings in America. It's not Roswell, it's not Area 51, but for decades, people here have reported glowing orbs in the sky, mysterious aircraft, and encounters that defy explanation. Some claim they've seen massive crafts hovering silently over their farms. Others say they've witnessed unearthly creatures walking through the fields at night. Skeptics dismiss it all as superstition. But here's the thing, the sightings keep happening. The locals believe something is out there, and they're not the only ones. Government officials, military personnel, and even scientists have come to investigate. What is really going on in this Kansas town? Why do the UFOs keep coming back? And is there something here that the rest of the world isn't supposed to know? To understand why this town has become the UFO capital of the world, we need to go back to the first sighting, the shocking encounters, and the chilling evidence that might finally reveal the truth. For most of its history, this tiny Kansas town was just another quiet place on the map. Population barely a few hundred miles of farmland in every direction and nothing much to see. People here were farmers, mechanics, school teachers. Life was simple, uneventful. But that all changed on one fateful night in the early 1950s. It started with a local farmer, Harold Peterson, a man who had lived in the area his entire life. He was known for being practical, no nonsense, and not the kind of person to believe in tall tales.
One evening, just past sunset, I was out in my fields, finishing up some late work when I noticed something strange in the sky. A bright light, far too big to be a star, moving in a way that no plane could. At first I thought it was a comet or a falling star, but then it stopped, completely still, hanging in the sky, glowing with an eerie orange light. I stood frozen, watching in disbelief. Then, without warning, the object darted across the sky at an impossible speed, stopping again directly over my field.
Harold ran back to his house, calling for his wife Margaret, who barely had time to step onto the porch before she saw it too. It wasn't just a light anymore. It was a massive, disc-shaped object hovering silently just above the ground. No engine noise, no wind disturbance, nothing. Just an enormous glowing craft that seemed to defy everything Harold understood about the world. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the object shot straight up into the sky and vanished in an instant. No explosion, no sound, just gone. Harold was left standing there, shaken. He knew what he saw, but who would believe him? This was Kansas, not some science fiction story. But before Harold could decide whether to tell anyone, reports started flooding in. That same night, other locals had seen the same thing. Some claimed they saw strange lights weaving through the sky. Others reported seeing multiple crafts moving in formation. A few, the ones who didn't want to talk too loudly, claimed they saw beings moving in the fields. It didn't take long before the news spread beyond the town. Soon newspapers picked up the story, reporters came knocking, and before anyone could make sense of it, the town was being called the UFO hotspot of Kansas. But what no one realized at the time was that this was just the beginning. Over the next few decades, sightings increased. The stories became more bizarre, more detailed, and more impossible to ignore. Something was happening here, but why? And even stranger, there were whispers that the government knew more than it was letting on. The first sighting in the 1950s may have seemed like an isolated incident, but in the years that followed, it became clear that something strange was happening in this small Kansas town. Reports of strange lights, hovering discs, and bizarre encounters started to appear more frequently. At first, the town's sheriff, Tom Wilkes, chalked it up to overactive imaginations. But then he saw something himself.
It was the summer of 1965, and I was patrolling a stretch of road just outside of town when I noticed a bright blue light following my squad car. I slowed down, thinking it was an aircraft or a helicopter, but when I pulled over, the light shot straight up into the sky and disappeared. I was a no-nonsense lawman, not someone who believed in UFOs, but that night changed everything.
Soon after, more witnesses came forward. Farmers claimed to see cattle acting strangely, disappearing without a trace, and then showing up miles away with mysterious incisions. Some townspeople even whispered about black-suited government officials showing up after particularly bizarre encounters, questioning witnesses and warning them to stay quiet. And then, in the early 1970s, the town was given a new, unexpected title, the UFO capital of the world. The name came from a national tabloid which ran a feature story on the town's eerie encounters. That article changed everything. People started arriving from all over: UFO researchers, conspiracy theorists, paranormal investigators, and just plain curious visitors flooded in, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was haunting the Kansas skies. Some came with telescopes and cameras. Others brought equipment to detect radio signals or electromagnetic disturbances. They camped out in fields, staked out highways, and swapped stories late into the night. For the people of the town, this was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, local businesses boomed. The once quiet diner became a hub for UFO enthusiasts. Hotels, which barely had guests before, suddenly saw full bookings. A few enterprising locals even started selling souvenirs, alien-themed postcards, t-shirts, even so-called UFO detectors. But on the other hand, there was a growing fear that the government was watching. Some witnesses who had reported strange sightings were later visited by men in dark suits who didn't introduce themselves and only asked one question: "What did you see?" And then, there were the military aircraft. By the late 1970s, strange black helicopters were seen flying over the town at odd hours of the night. Witnesses claimed they moved silently, without markings, and always seemed to show up after a particularly dramatic sighting. The official explanation? Routine military exercises, but if that were true, why did they never announce them beforehand? Something was happening here, and the more people started looking for answers, the stranger the events became. Chapter 3. The incident that changed everything. By the 1980s, the town's reputation as the UFO capital of the world had reached new heights. TV crews from national networks began arriving, eager to document the bizarre events that had made this tiny Kansas town a hotbed of extraterrestrial activity. But then, one incident would change everything forever. It was a crisp October night in 1983 when a group of local teenagers, out driving on the outskirts of town, saw something that would terrify them for the rest of their lives. A massive, triangular-shaped craft, completely silent, hovered just above the treetops. The object had no visible lights, no windows, no sound. And yet, as it passed overhead, their car completely shut down, the radio cut out, the headlights dimmed, the engine died. For 3 agonizing minutes the craft sat motionless in the sky before suddenly shooting off at an impossible speed. The moment it vanished, their car roared back to life as if nothing had happened. The teens ran back to town, frantic, telling anyone who would listen. At first, no one believed them. Until the next day, when multiple farmers reported their cattle missing. Some of those cattle were later discovered in strange, precise formations, with surgical-like cuts and no blood anywhere on the ground. For the first time, even the town's most skeptical residents started to wonder, was something really happening here? A few weeks after the 1983 Triangle incident, the town noticed something even stranger. Outsiders had started showing up. Not just tourists and UFO enthusiasts, but people in unmarked vehicles, men in dark suits, military personnel who didn't belong. Witnesses claimed that after a major sighting, strange black SUVs would roll into town, and men with no names and no credentials would start asking questions. They weren't the typical journalists or paranormal investigators. They weren't curious tourists. They were something else. Then came the government denials. The military repeatedly dismissed claims of unidentified flying objects, stating that all sightings were just aircraft, weather balloons, or natural phenomena. But if that were the case, why were top-ranking officials suddenly so interested in a town with less than 1,500 people? Even more bizarre, one night in 1987, residents saw something unprecedented. A group of men, fully dressed in military uniforms, retrieving something from a nearby field under the cover of darkness. Witnesses reported seeing floodlights, strange equipment, and even what appeared to be a metallic object being loaded onto a truck. The next day the field was completely burned, Locals who tried to investigate were warned to stay away, but no one ever found out what was taken that night. By the 1990s, the town's status as a UFO hotspot had reached its peak. Tourists arrived by the busload, eager to see the place where so many strange encounters had taken place. Some came with radar detectors and infrared cameras, convinced they could catch something the government didn't want them to see. Then came the wild theories. Some believed that the town was sitting on top of an underground alien base. Others were convinced that the United States government was testing top-secret aircraft, using the UFO rumors as a convenient cover-up. Some even believed that alien abductions were taking place in the area, with locals experiencing missing time, strange nightmares, and unexplained scars. One elderly resident who had lived in the town for over 70 years claimed that these encounters had been happening long before anyone reported them. She spoke of stories passed down from older generations, about strange lights in the sky, animals going missing, and mysterious figures appearing in the fields at night. Could it be that the UFO activity had been happening for centuries? And if so, why? Today, the town remains one of the most well-known UFO hotspots in the world. Paranormal researchers still visit, and skywatching events are held every year, drawing in thousands of people hoping to witness the unexplained. But one thing remains certain: the mystery is far from solved. Even in recent years, reports of strange lights, unidentified flying objects, and even unexplained blackouts have continued. The government still denies any involvement, and skeptics argue that it's all just small-town superstition. But for the people who have lived through it, the ones who have seen the impossible with their own eyes, there is no doubt something is out there. And whatever it is, it has chosen this small Kansas town as its home. For decades, the town had been known for its bizarre sightings and unexplained phenomena. But there was one story that stood above the rest, one encounter so strange, so unexplainable, that even skeptics were left speechless. It happened on a cold December night in 1995. A local farmer, known for being level-headed and deeply skeptical of the UFO hysteria, was driving home on a back road when he saw something impossible. Hovering just above the trees was a massive disc-shaped craft. Not a plane, not a drone, something he had never seen before. Silent, glowing, and impossibly smooth, like it wasn't made from any material found on Earth. But the strangest part? As he slowed down to get a better look, everything around him stopped. His truck engine died instantly, the air became eerily still, and for a moment it was as if time itself had frozen. Then, a bright flash of light. The next thing he knew, he was standing outside his truck, nearly a mile away from where he had stopped. His watch was gone, his radio had been ripped from the dashboard, and worst of all, he had lost nearly 3 hours. It was the classic case of missing time, a phenomenon often reported by alleged abductees. The farmer had no memory of what happened during those hours, no explanation for how he had gotten so far from his truck, no clue as to what had happened to him. The town was divided. Some said it was proof of alien contact. Others believed it was a government experiment gone wrong, and some insisted that he had simply fallen asleep behind the wheel and imagined the whole thing. But here's where things get even weirder. Years later, a satellite image of the area surfaced, taken on the very night of the encounter. It showed an enormous circular imprint in a nearby field, a pattern that looked exactly like the crop circles reported in England and other UFO hotspots. To this day, the farmer refuses to speak publicly about the event, but those who know him say that he was never the same after that night. He sold his farm, moved out of town, and disappeared. Whatever happened that night, it was clear. Something beyond explanation had taken place, and it was proof that the mystery surrounding this small town in Kansas was far from over. So, how did a quiet, rural town in Kansas become the UFO capital of the world? Was it just mass hysteria fueled by overactive imaginations? A clever tourism strategy designed to keep the town alive? Or was something truly otherworldly happening in the skies over Kansas? One thing is certain, too many people across too many years have reported the same strange events. Glowing lights in the sky, unidentified crafts moving at impossible speeds, livestock mutilations with surgical precision, and even abduction stories too eerily similar to dismiss. Even the US government has admitted that unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, are real. Reports from the Pentagon confirm that pilots and military officials have encountered aircraft with no known propulsion systems, crafts that can maneuver in ways that defy the laws of physics. So, is it really that crazy to think something beyond our understanding could be happening here? Whether the truth lies in secret government experiments, interdimensional visitors, or something even more mind-bending, this town remains one of the most fascinating UFO hotspots in history. And maybe, just maybe, we've only scratched the surface of what's really out there. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the strangest mysteries in America, hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing stories. Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and remember, sometimes the truth really is out there. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, sometimes the truth really is out there.